This is the KitchenAid 8QT commercial mixer. If you're thinking about picking one up, I just want to walk you through my experience. The main reason I considered this mixer was the 8-quart bowl. I often make bread dough, cookie dough, and larger batches of frosting. With smaller mixers, I sometimes have to divide a recipe into 2 batches. That adds time and leaves me with more cleaning. This bowl gives me enough room to make a large batch without filling it right to the edge. The mixer is heavy. I can move it, but I wouldn't want to carry it back and forth every time I use it. I think it makes more sense to give it a permanent place on the counter. The weight does help when I'm kneading dough. It stays in place and doesn't slide around much, even when the dough gets stiff. Setup was simple. The bowl sits on 2 side pins and locks into the rear support. I use the lever on the side to raise it into the mixing position. It takes a little practice to line everything up, especially because the bowl is large. After doing it a few times, it becomes routine. The bowl has a large handle, which helps when I'm carrying a full batch. It's still a bit awkward when it's loaded with heavy dough. I usually support the bottom with my other hand. The bowl lift design feels more stable than the tilt-head KitchenAid mixers I've used, but removing the bowl isn't quite as quick. This model comes with a flat beater, a spiral dough hook, and an 11-wire whip. The stainless steel attachments feel solid, and I can put them in the dishwasher. That matters to me because dough can dry onto a hook quickly. I still rinse the attachments right after use, but I don't have to spend much time scrubbing them. I've used the flat beater for cookie dough and cake batter. It mixes large batches evenly, though I still stop and scrape the bowl. The beater doesn't reach every bit of flour along the sides and bottom. That's normal for most stand mixers I've used, but it's worth mentioning. A large bowl doesn't remove the need for a spatula. The spiral hook handles bread dough well. The motor doesn't seem to slow down much with the batch sizes I make. It has a steady sound under load, and I don't notice a lot of shaking. Sticky dough can climb the hook, so I sometimes stop the mixer and push it back down. I also avoid filling the bowl just because there's extra space. 8 quarts is useful, but that doesn't mean every dense dough recipe should be pushed to the limit. There are 10 speed settings, starting with stir. I use the low settings for adding flour because the higher settings can throw dry ingredients out of the bowl. Even the low setting can create a small flour cloud if I add too much at once. I didn't get a bowl guard with the setup I used, and I think one would be useful for loose ingredients or thinner batter. It may be included with some packages, but I'd check before ordering. The separate power switch took me a moment to get used to. Once I understood the controls, I liked having it. It helps prevent the mixer from starting while I'm wiping it down or changing something. I still unplug it before cleaning around the attachment shaft. The motor is rated at 500 watts, with KitchenAid listing 1.3 peak horsepower. I don't put too much weight on the horsepower number. What matters to me is how it behaves with actual ingredients. With bread dough and thick cookie dough, it keeps a consistent pace and doesn't get as warm as some smaller mixers I've used. It's fairly quiet on the lower settings for a mixer this size. At higher speeds, I can clearly hear the motor and gears. It isn't a quiet appliance when I'm whipping cream at speed 8 or 10. The sound is steady though, and I haven't noticed much rattling. The wire whip works well for whipped cream, egg whites, and frosting. The large bowl makes more sense for medium or large amounts. If I'm whipping a very small amount, the ingredients can sit too low in the bowl. For 1 or 2 egg whites, I'd rather use a hand mixer or a smaller bowl setup. Cleaning is manageable. I put the bowl and attachments in the dishwasher when there's space. I wipe the mixer body with a damp cloth. Flour tends to collect around the bowl supports and near the base, so those areas need a little attention. The contour silver finish looks simple, but I have noticed that painted surfaces can pick up small marks. I wouldn't expect it to stay free of scratches in a busy kitchen. The orange power cord is thicker and more noticeable than a normal appliance cord. It makes sense for commercial use, but it stands out on a home counter. The cord is about 4 feet long, so I still need to place the mixer fairly close to an outlet. Before using it, I was worried that the 8-quart bowl would be too large for normal recipes. That concern was partly valid. It can mix smaller batches, but it feels most useful when I'm making several loaves, a large amount of cookie dough, or enough frosting for multiple cakes. For a single cake or a small batch of cookies, a 5 or 6 quart mixer is easier to handle. Compared with the smaller KitchenAid tilt-head models I've used, this one feels more stable and has more room. It also takes up more counter space, and the bowl is heavier to wash and store. Compared with a 6-quart bowl lift mixer, the difference is mainly capacity and how long it can handle demanding work. I wouldn't choose this model only because it has the largest number on the bowl. I think it makes sense for someone who bakes often and regularly needs large batches. It can also suit a cafe, bakery, catering kitchen, or shared cooking space that needs an NSF Certified countertop mixer. I don't think it makes much sense for occasional baking. It costs more, takes up room, and isn't as convenient for very small recipes. One concern I'd keep in mind is long-term service. I've seen mixed owner reports about the speed control, bowl lift mechanism, and motor. Mine has handled my use without those problems, but I wouldn't ignore those reports. I'd check the warranty, local service options, and return policy before buying, especially if the mixer will be used every day. My recommendation is simple. If I regularly make large batches and have a permanent counter spot, I'd consider it. If I mostly make small recipes, I'd stay with a smaller stand mixer and save the space. The KitchenAid 8QT commercial mixer does its job well when the batch size matches what it was made to handle, but it's more machine than many home kitchens need. If you have questions about the bowl, attachments, noise, or how it handles a specific recipe, leave them in the comments. Subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see more practical product reviews. Thank you for watching.